Welcome back. A lot of people hope to shed some pounds during the summer, and achieving a healthy weight is certainly a good goal, but sometimes it goes too far, and sometimes food becomes an unhealthy obsession. Here to tell us more about eating disorders and other disorders related to your meals, we welcome our regular expert, Dr. Julie Swendler, bariatrician from Medical Bariatrics of Lexington. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me again.
We were talking a little bit in the break. There's so many different ways that food and dieting can become unhealthy outside of the normal weight gain and obesity concerns that we usually talk about. So this is an interesting perspective, a little bit different from what we usually talk about.
Well, yeah, and I think a lot of people out there think that an eating disorder is an absolute extreme disorder where somebody is hospitalized and everything else, and that's not really the case. So I wanted to talk about, what are eating disorders and what are the most recent stats out there about it, and maybe a couple questions where you can look at yourself and say, is it even possible that I could potentially have something like that? But the scary truth stems from the fact that right now in America, 80% of women are actually dissatisfied with the body appearance. 80%, that's astonishing. But even scarier, when we talk about our youth, 81% of 10-year-olds right now are actually afraid of, quote, being fat. These type of statistics lead to unhealthy eating patterns. So, what is an eating disorder? Well, the three big ones that people hear about are bulimia, binge eating disorder, and anorexia. Anorexia is a self-starvation type. This is where people just refuse to eat. They get themselves at a abnormal, unhealthy, low weight, and they still think of themselves as being overweight despite that. And it's dangerous because starving yourself or not having enough hydration as well, too, it affects our electrolytes. And can actually cause heart arrhythmias and death. So anorexia is a very, very dangerous one. In fact, they did a study that showed girls between the ages of 15 to 24, if they suffered from anorexia, the mortality of that disease process was 12 times higher than all other cases from any type of disease process in that age category. So a very scary thing for somebody not to get help with. On the flip token, binge eating disorder is an overeating, a compulsive eating. So people buy large amounts of food, they eat it compulsively at large periods of time, most often in secret, and they kind of hide the evidence, and then there's a feeling of guilt behind it. So they don't want to do it, but they can't. It's a bit of an obsession. And then finally, bulimia is the binge eating, but also with a purging. And purging doesn't have to be vomiting. It could be excessive use of laxative or even over-exercising, but it is an abnormal way to get rid of what happened. Bulimia is also very dangerous as well, too, especially with the vomiting or the diuretic use. It can also affect our electrolytes, it can affect our colon, and it can lead to hospitalization as well, too, and even death. So these are things that are the big, scary, dangerous ones. And actually in 2005, the National Eating Disorder Association did a random survey. They just interviewed people on the street, and they gave them a very brief eating disorder screen, and they found 4 out of every 10 either had diagnostic criteria for an eating disorder or knew somebody that had it. A very scary amount. But the biggest thing that people don't realize is it's more than just the 3 biggies. There's a whole, quote, other category, which encompasses different traits or symptoms of these different eating disorders and puts them together. So it may not be a true clinically diagnosed syndrome, but is still very dangerous for the person and still emotionally affects them very well. So very draining and needs professional help as well, too. So the main questions I want people to think about, these 4, are number 1, have they ever eaten in secret? If the answer is yes, they get 1 point. Number 2, does your weight affect the way you feel about yourself? If you get a yes is another point. Another one, do you just think that you may actually be affected by an eating disorder, either now or in the past? If yes, you get another one. And then the final one is, are you actually satisfied with your eating disorder patterns? If the answer is no, you get a point there. So here it is. If you have 2 out of the 4 that are yeses, you're at a high risk for an undiagnosed eating disorder. And if that's the case, seek some help. There's a lot of professional help out there. Lexington's very blessed to having an eating disorder clinic. So talk to your physician or talk to a bariatrician in the area and we'll be happy to help you out.
And of course, you've seen Dr. Swendler's information at the bottom of your screen with a website and phone number if you're interested in healthy approaches to your weight and eating. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.
We'll be back with a check of your forecast.